here for 4 years now. Well, actually, pretty much exactly to this date. I started as a harvest temp, funnily enough. I wrote to Barney looking for a job when I moved here. I'm originally from the southeast of England, and yeah, there wasn't really a job going, but it gave me an opportunity, and I did about 18 months as basically an apprentice, climbing in and out of tanks with a pressure washer and doing all the bottling line and all that sort of stuff. But then since then, I've taken over the reins on making the cider part of things. So it's something I'm really, really passionate about. So I feel really, really fortunate to be able to do something that I love every day for a living. But yeah, Sandford Orchards is, we're based in Crediton in Devon, so just out of Exeter. Barney's been making cider since about 2002, but as a business, it's been running for over a decade now. And they've been on this site for about 5 years. This site, the Creedy Valley Cider Works, originally back in 1935 it was built, so it's one of the oldest working cider mills in the country, and they've made cider all the way up through to the 60s, and then Bulmers came along and bought them, and then ever since then it was various things. But yeah, about 5 years ago Barney bought Cider Works, and we're going through, you know, a renovation period really to just try and make bring a bit of life back into the old beast. There's still a fair few holes in the ceiling and all that sort of thing. It's a proper old school building, but it's ideal for making cider. And this whole area as well, I was trying to find some photos to show you guys, but nowadays when you come here, we're on a commercial estate and everyone's like, well, where's the orchards? And there used to be just so many orchards around here. Part of the problem that's happened ever since, well, post-war, the need for more arable crops meant that loads of the orchards got grubbed out. I think the UK's lost something like 90% of its orchards.
Has indeed.
So, yeah, so now it's, you know, hopefully we'll be able to replant some of those. We planted about 14,000 cider trees last year, I think it was. So there's a lot of stuff going on around here in our local area. I mean, there's so many orchards you wouldn't believe it. They're all so tucked away. You can drive through Devon and think, where are they? But they're all down these windy little paths and in the middle of nowhere. So, but yeah, all of the apples that we source for making cider are all within a 30-mile radius of the press. So it's all very local. Some of the orchards that we use are very, very old standard orchards. So ones that cattle would have grazed once upon a time. Those orchards will have someone go out and hand-pick for us, and then the rest of them, most of our apples arrive machine picked. So the trees get shaken, this machine goes around, scoops them all up, and they get delivered to our base just over the way there. Mm-hmm. We're just in the first week of harvest now, so stressful times, very, very busy, but it's also quite a lot of fun once you get your teeth stuck into it, sort of thing. So yeah, it's just a really good time to be talking about cider as well, I suppose. Like trying to get people interested, because COVID's been tough. Yep. On the industry. So trying to get people excited about cider is really, really important, because we are, unfortunately, there's so many apples that are going to go to waste this year because all of our tanks are still full. One of the things that we as, like, you know, supporting the slow food producers it's a thing that we make once a year. Yes. It's a harvest period between September and December, and we only get that one opportunity to get it right. But unfortunately, because of COVID, our sales have crashed quite considerably. When 600 pubs aren't open, it does take quite a dent in the sales. So most of our vats are still full. So we're going to be pressing about half of what we would usually do. And I know that a lot of the smaller makers have been really, really impacted by this, because they can't go to farmers markets, they can't go to county shows, they can't go to festivals. So yeah, we just really want to get people on board and look after cider makers and look after the apple growers, because really it's those guys that have been most badly hit by this.
Well, we're just delighted you're here, and thank you for taking time at harvest time. I just know how busy you are, and we're just delighted that you can spend this time with us. And certainly within our movement, we are certainly speaking about hospitality and encouraging people to drink at home, drinking responsibility at home, but to be drinking at home, drinking cider, drinking perry and craft beer, because, you know, we're acutely aware of just how much of this product is drunk in the hospitality business and no hospitality. Very similar even with cheeses. So small craft cheesemakers is exactly the same. The great British public don't tend to buy such great quality products at home as the restaurants do. So if most, perhaps not in this audience, but if you're buying cheese, you're probably buying less quality cheese at home than the restaurants are. So we're just delighted you're here and to share this. And I'm really, really excited by this tasting. It's yeah, it's gonna be great.
Oh, good. Well, I'm going to talk a bit about apples to start with, I think, because that's quite an important part of the process. I've got 3 here. I wish I had 4, but basically what I'm going to talk about is cider apples in particular, which is what we use in the southwest. And we have 4 kind of distinct different types, and you know, in terms of their grading. So we've got here, I've got a Coleman seedling. So this is a sharp apple. So this is very high in malic acid, fairly low in sugar, and doesn't contain any tannin. But what is really helpful with this for making cider is it gives it that crisp, refreshing acidity, but also having that acidity helps protect our cider during fermentation. Then I've got here, this is a Tremlett's bitter. So this is a bittersweet. The bitter refers to the fact that this is a tannic cider apple. So if I was to bite into this and have a chew on it, it's actually really sweet. I did have one of these the other day. It's lovely and sweet, but eventually you start chewing it and you think, oh my God, my mouth is drying out so much. And you just get a hell of a lot of texture, and eventually you'll want to spit it out because it is so dry. But it's those tannins, which is what makes West Country cider different to cider made in different regions in the UK and around the world. Those tannins give a lot of texture, flavour. A lot of the complexity in the aroma and the flavour comes from those tannins. So the third style would be a bitter sharp. So again, full of tannin, but much more acidity. And then the final one, this is a sweet Alford. So this is a pure sweet cider variety. So very high in sugar, not much tannin, and lower levels of acidity. To eat one of these, it's so sweet, and it doesn't have that acidity that you'd have with a dessert apple. So it's not that great for eating. There's nothing wrong with eating them, but what's useful for these in making cider is that they help to balance out that flavour profile, because there's not so much tannin in there, and lots of sugar means we'll get a nice alcohol yield as well from our cider by using these sweet varieties. But yeah, the most important thing with making cider really is getting a blend of these varieties. You can definitely make lots of single variety ciders like we do. We do a Tremlett's bitter, we made a Yarlington mill. They're very delicious things, and it's really nice to try single variety ciders because you get to understand a bit more about how those particular apple varieties affect a blend. And if you think about wine, most people know that they like particular grape varieties, but no one really could tell me what cider apple they like to have in their cider, because it's just not a thing. It's just not something that people are really connecting with. So it's really important for us to make single varieties, get people interested, get them to try them, but ultimately having a blend is where you're going to get that balance. You get that nice rich cider, but you can also have acidity and just the complete package really. So those are the main sort of varieties that we use. We use over 30 varieties. There's all sorts of stuff made locally. The Ellis Bitter is an apple that we use quite a lot of. It originates from Crediton itself, but we use a lot of Dabinett, Yarlington Mill, Michelin, Browns is the main sort of sharp variety we use. And again, another Devon variety, but adds a lovely aroma and texture to the cider. And basically, yeah, it's all about the blend. So if I made a single variety with the Coleman seedling, or say a Bramley apple, it's so sharp that you'd probably be better off using it as a cleaner. But having some Coleman seedling and then lots of Tremlett's bitter and some sweet Alford will make a lovely cider. And that as well, actually, I'll quickly just demonstrate. I've got a press here. I've already milled the apples, so because it's really noisy and a bit of a mess and nothing exciting to see. I'll just put this little hobby press. I'll put it up on the barrel.
Please do.
And then I'll show you a little press demonstration. Hopefully see that. Just take the camera back. Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. So,
I know what I want for Christmas now.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, oh, this is the best, and especially if you've got apples in your garden and you don't know what to do with them, and quite often they go to waste, which I know a lot of people do up and down the countryside. Get yourself a press and make some cider, because it is so much fun, especially as well if you've got neighbours who can chip in, and you can do a little community pressing with your friends and family, and hopefully we'll get some juice in a second. This has been sat a little while, so it's been pressing itself. So hopefully we'll get a nice little
It's
run
flowing.
So,
We can see.
there we go. So there you go, and you can see that the juice is a little bit darker than what you might expect from an apple juice. It's got that kind of amber colour. Again, that comes from the tannins. So as they start to oxidize, you get that darker brown colour. This apple has been milled quite a while ago, so it's been macerating. If you can see there, it's got like the texture of lumpy porridge.
Mm-hmm.
But without that milling stage, you can't tread apples. Basically, without that milling stage, you won't be able to get the juice out. There's other ways you can do it. At home, if you freeze them and then allow them to thaw out, you could then squeeze that with your hand and then get juice fresh from there. I'm just going to take this press down now. But yeah, so as you can see, that's the juice. I'm going to little taste there. Oh, it's lovely. Yeah, so you get the nice acidity from the Coleman seedling. Now I'm starting to get this drying sensation on my mouth, which is from the tannins, and I can taste it. It's lovely and sweet. So I'm actually quite excited. When I'm finished with this video, I'm going to press that and I'm going to ferment it at home.
That sounds a good thing to do.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I said that seems a really good thing to do. Yeah. A good thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that's, yeah, I mean, and then so the cider, how it's made is very similar to how a wine is made. So this time of year, take your ripe fruit, do exactly what I've just done there, mill them, press them. And like there's a, you know, probably the worst bit about this is that I now say that my job's quite easy because all you do is let the apple, like you just let it ferment. It's very simple process. It's just apple juice, ferment it. It will take a couple of weeks, couple of months, depending on how warm it is.
Okay.
That would mean if it's say sometimes during harvest, early harvest, we can have some quite warm temperatures, so sort of 20 degrees, and then fermentation can last 2 weeks. And then, but later in the season, when we start getting into the depths of November and it's freezing cold down here, fermentation can run right through to sort of February time. But yeah, we do want a slow fermentation. It prevents you losing too much flavour through the fermentation process, because a lot of the aroma compounds can be kicked off. Mm-hmm. So we want it to be a nice ambient temperature, nice cool temperature, sorry. And what we want is for that fermentation to be nice and gentle and happy, so it doesn't create any off notes, and we maintain as much flavour as we can from those cider apples. And
what yeast do you use? Sorry.
So we use a mixture here. So predominantly we use yeasts that you would usually use for wine. So we use a lot of yeast for champagne that they use in champagne making, because they're very robust, but also provide great flavour. And then we'll also do some wild yeast fermentations as well. So we won't add any cultured yeast, and what you get from that, you do get a much more complex flavour, but what we want with our products is a bit more consistency. So that's why we've mostly used the wine yeast, but we still get a great tasting cider from that. But it's handy to have a few tanks of wild fermented cider. So if I've got any that are maybe a bit lacking in character, I can blend that. So we spend the rest of the year kind of going through the tanks, tasting them, making sure everything's happy. And then throughout the process, we're sort of like, right, that tank's good, that one that will do with a bit of a blend. So and because this is live cider, this is made from pressed apples. There's a lot of life in those tanks. So as they will mature at different rates, depending on how tannic they are as well. We start to get some of the tannins soften and they drop. So it's a constant sort of process with cider. You don't really, say with beer, you start with your raw ingredients, and then in a couple of weeks' time, you've got something that you want to bottle and get it out. But with cider, the fermentation's a couple of weeks, but then maturation, we'll start using the cider probably about 9 months later.
Okay.
So it's quite a long time. But then some ciders will want at least a year, maybe more, of maturation before they're exactly where we want them. So like right now, some of the ciders that we're making at the moment from last year's crop, the cider is like peaked now basically. So yeah, really enjoying blending at the moment. So 9 months later, we've matured, and now we'll start looking at blending for packaging. And yeah, we just have to keep on top of that all year round. Myself and my colleague Dave, we will just go around tasting the tanks. Another awful part of the job. Yeah, it's a fun industry to work in, put it that way.
Fascinating. And the tanks, are you holding fresh apple juice in the tanks as well, or is it ever, or when you're pressing, do you instantly ferment all of them, or do you hold some as just apple juice, or?
We will hold some as just apple juice. We'll make ice cider and stuff like that. So we need to freeze the apple juice and then thaw that to make a concentrate, things like that, to make ice cider. But generally speaking, no. Apples come in, they're milled, they're pressed, and then we get them fermented and gone, because we've got so many apples coming through. Otherwise, we'd run out of tank space very quickly. So we wouldn't really store any apple juice on site, apart from for making soft drinks. So.
Great.
But yeah, I think that's one of the key differences with our smaller and medium-sized cider makers, where we are totally reliant on fresh apple juice. We don't use any concentrates. So at Sandford Orchards, we only use those fresh apples from September to November. So it's only that window of opportunity that we have to do it. Some of the more sort of industrial makers, so we say, have the ability to make all year round by using apple concentrate. Makes a much simpler, more linear drink. Perfectly pleasant though it is, but that's the difference really between what we do and what the bigger guys do. A lot more about the quality, the authenticity, and much richer, more complex ciders.
Fantastic.
Shall we taste some now?
I think we would like to taste some. Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. So we've all got 3 ciders. If you could just tell us.
3 ciders. We've got, I think, and we will start with Devon Mist. Oh, and just a quick apology. I'm really sorry that we didn't get the proper label out to you guys for the Yarlington, Dabinett and Browns. It was just a bit of a push with the printers. So they're here soon. And once they're launched on the website, then it will be in its proper clothing. But we will start with, Devon Mist. So this is a 4.5% hazy session cider. So this is our second best-selling cider after Devon Red. If you're lucky enough to live in Devon, you'll find this on tap in quite a few places, and also in London. So the session cider, nice 4.5%. So it's not too strong. This is just on the sweet side of medium. And what you'll notice when you smell this cider, there's an awful lot of complexity to it that you might not expect from the sort of run-of-the-mill ciders that you find in the supermarket. So you get a nice, I guess it's just, you've got that smell of like autumn. I mean, I'm sitting in a room that's full of milled apple. It's just incredible, really.
I'm getting comments in from people who are tasting at home saying just it's like being in an orchard, that it's intensely apple, um,
Yeah.
delicious and crisp.
That's
Someone
it.
else is saying. So you can't see these
Yeah,
comments; they come on my screen. But and it's just really refreshing and a wonderful balance of acidity.
yeah. I think that's one of the key things of our ciders is that. But I mean, for me, balance is everything. I would never put a cider out there that was too sharp or too tannic or too sweet or anything. It's got to be a marry of those flavors. We're really my colleagues are really hard on me about getting it right. So it's something that we take really seriously, and we just won't let anything out that's not great. So yeah, with this cider, it's you've got that lovely cider character, and it's a strange thing to say, but you've got a lot of tannin, perfect, like a lovely balance of sweetness and acidity. And what is great about this one is it's definitely something that you enjoy a few pints of in the pub with your friends, especially in the summer as well. This absolutely flies out in the summer.
Yeah. It's absolutely delicious.
Yeah. And so this was first blended in 2011. So I think it was one of the first cloudy ciders on the market.
Okay.
So that's and that cloud, the haze rather, it's completely natural. It's just we haven't filtered the cider, so there's nothing. It's just yeast and whatever apple bits that are left over, if you like. But that not filtering it is what leaves that lovely character that you get. Much more traditional cider-like character.
And obviously, all ciders are drinking ciders, but would you match this with food, or would you suggest one of the other ones if we were to be having food, or is this more of a kind of go to the pub or sit at home at the moment? Lots of places in the UK don't really have pubs at the moment. We'll see, but
No, yeah, I mean, well, I think with food matching with cider is incredibly versatile in that manner, and there's so many things you have this with. It's nice and soft, so. I mean, on the back of the label here, we have actually put some food matching here. So sausages, Middle Eastern spices, soft cheeses. Yes. So you don't want to match this with something that's very powerful in flavour, because it would be a bit lost. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that we, as cider makers, we should probably shout a bit more about, is that does go incredibly well with food. So yeah, so you would want to have this with so things that aren't too flavoursome. And it will just have a nice balance to it. But lovely, I mean, the cider cheese is just the best. So even if you're not, if you're worried about whether you can have it with dinner, just have it at home with friends and have some cheese. And it's delicious.
I'm thinking Quick's goat cheddar with that. Quick's, of course, are very close to you.
That'd be amazing.
But Quick's goat cheddar
just down the road.
and some Sandfords. The hazy cider, I think that would be my absolute match. But I'm always amazed that actually we don't have more cider in restaurants actually here in the UK. I mean, yes, cider is made in France and places like that, but I think if we had that kind of culture that they have with wine, we just don't celebrate cider in the same way. Perhaps increasingly so with people like St. John, who are doing some really interesting things and doing some trailblazing, but actually we have these incredibly complex, really interesting drinks. And the same with craft beer. That actually we tend to think of cider being something that we go to the pub and drink with our mates, or we think of beer and going and drinking that with our mates, but actually are really versatile and so flavorful that can work really, really well with food as well. So no, that's
delicious. I think that's one of the things with cider. It's long had this connotation of being like beer because it's normally presented on a font. You drink it in a pint. And I love that side of it, but the fact that we also, this is what we're trying to do really with our Fine Cider range, is trying to access those different avenues that, maybe people hadn't thought about before. And when people do try cider, that's, really rich and really interesting and really flavoursome, they just go, wow, I didn't know that this existed really. And the amount of times that I work at like food festivals and stuff, you normally have like a couple walk up and that like the husband or the wife is dragging the other one over because they can't wait to get some cider, and the other one gets there and you say, would you like to try some? It's like, oh no, I wouldn't do that. But there seems to be this stigma that we're really trying to shift, and there's a lot of people really doing good things in the industry, trying to help to improve that image and try to have cider served at the table with your food in a restaurant. We'll get there. It's just Rome wasn't built in a day. I think the quality and the availability of cider now is way better than it has been for many years. So
delicious.
That's exciting. Well, should we go on to the next one?
Second one. Yep.
Yeah. So we've got. So this is Devon Scrumpy. Scrumpy is an interesting term that we kind of use because it's got connotations that when people are on holiday down here, they're kind of like excited about trying some local cider. Scrumpy to some people perhaps would be rough cider, so they expect it to be the sort of thing you get from a farm. So sometimes when people try this, they're a bit shocked because it's actually really nice. And what we've got here, this is a still cider. We wanted to include a still cider because a lot of people don't expect cider to be still. Again, back to the, it's served in pints and it's fizzy. So having a still cider sometimes really throws people, but at the same time, some people really enjoy that cider. So this is a medium dry, 6% alcohol, so a little bit more booze, but that alcohol adds some extra depth and flavour to the cider, and the fact that it's still means that you get that lovely texture, more so coming through from the tannin. It's not lost by the fizz, so you have a lovely, rich drink.
It's absolutely delicious, and you're quite right about Scrumpy. I grew up in Cornwall, where Scrumpy was, when I was of first drinking age, it wasn't as fine as this. If I was going to the pub, I mean, this is just delicious, and those tannins are just working so beautifully. I mean, again, in food pairing, this would be really delicious for something like sausages. I think, Piper's Farm again around the corner from you. You're in this kind of foodie heaven there, aren't you? The kind of the three of you, but those saddleback pork sausages from Piper's, and a glass of this.
Yeah, definitely. The more rustic food, the better. Really, with this one, I think this would be amazing with like ploughman's, sausage and mash, steak, something like that. I think that would be really lovely to match. Something really rich. But yeah, this is. I think one of the other areas that we're trying to sort of get people to understand as well with cider is that we do kind of get a bit stuck with dry, medium, and sweet. So this sort of fits in the middle ground somewhere, but I think that for a lot of people, the idea of a dry cider they might get a little bit concerned by that idea, but really you get quite a lot more flavour with the drier style of cider. So trying to get people to try more of these sorts of products is really important for us, for the whole industry, really. But yeah, this is it's definitely something. I think this would catch out a lot of people when they try it. It's something really different, and this is just proper cider to me.
Beautiful supple tannins. It's really delicious.
How are you getting on with your chopping through those?
I'm going to have a very good evening. I think we're all having a really good evening. And you must have the best evening if you're at Sandford still. So I think all of us here watching, those of us who've already got the cider, some of us will have bought the cider elsewhere. If not, I know you're going to go and buy this cider. It is absolutely delicious. So yeah. So
final one, and probably the one I'm most excited to talk about. So if I start waffling, then just give me a nudge and tell me to drink some cider. So this is Y.D.B, which is an initialism for Yarlington, Dabinett and Browns. This is the third cider in our Fine Cider range. So served in a share size bottle, this is 660 ml. And this cider is a blend of Yarlington Mill, Dabinett, Browns. So they're three of my favourite cider varieties, really. The Yarlington Mill, when you pour this, you'll see the lovely amber colour that this cider has got. A lot of that is coming from the Yarlington Mill. Naturally, such a rich and unctuous apple. It's like as a single variety, it makes the most delicious cider. One of my friends, Phil, in Wales, he was. We were talking about Yarlington the other day, and he said about when he goes and picks them, he just loves the smell. He thinks his car smells like bubblegum, like hubba bubba kind of thing. It's just it's amazing aroma. So yeah, so that's where you get that lovely golden colour. So that Yarlington mill, I arrested fermentation on that cider, so that there's a natural sweetness in this cider, which comes from that Yarlington mill. Then the next layer is the Dabinett. So the Dabinett was fermented in 2018, and that was a wild fermented cider. 2018, if we were wine people, we'd talk about that as a declarable year because it was phenomenal. We had that Dabinett fermented to 8.3% alcohol naturally. So that's good stuff. But that's where you get a lovely. You do get a bit of a warmth from the booze, so that's coming through from the Dabinett, and then. But what the Dabinett's got is a much richer tannins, so you get a lovely texture from the Dabinett. It's like the backbone of this cider. But then to finish off, 2019 browns, which we fermented with a white wine yeast. Browns being a sharp apple. It's got lovely aromatics, but I wanted to improve those by using that wine yeast. But without it, it's only 10% of this blend is browns, but without that browns in there, it wouldn't have the balance and that. I mean, it's just something that you'd want to keep going back to. But without that browns, it would be a bit too tannic, a bit too sweet, a bit too. It just needs that little bit, and it's amazing how much of a difference. I went through many trial blends to get this cider to where it is, and at 20% it was too acidic, and at 5% it wasn't enough. It's only a very small amount, but it's perfect for this blend. And then when you taste it,
it's just extraordinary. So delicious.
I love the Yarlington mill component of it with that natural sweetness. Just makes this a lovely fruity cider, and I think again I think if I was going to do this with food, I haven't done that yet. This has been 8 months in bottle as well, by the way. So this is a proper slow food drink. This one. If I was going to do this with food, probably again go down like the sort of fairly rich dishes. Go down. I think this would go really well with proteins, fats, and again with cheese, amazing. But to be honest, my favourite thing to do with this is just to have a whole bottle to myself.
That sounds a really good thing. I think in food pairing, I was thinking of, really good duck. Again, Piper's Farm duck.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Serve it with some cannellini beans, a bit of garlic in the beans. Really kind of plain, but you've got the fattiness with the duck, the richness of the duck meat, and this kind of apple, and then the tannin just cutting through that richness. And I think, one of my all-time winter treats is duck and beans, say Piper's Farm. You can even put a bit of gratinate on top, so a bit of Quick's cheddar and your cider with it. And you got the Holy Trinity, all three of you in the same area, food with a sense of place. Yeah, this is just extraordinary. I've never tasted this before. This is just incredible.
Oh, thank you. No, yeah, hopefully it'll be on sale very soon in its new label. But yeah, so these ciders are really where me and Dave and Barney get to have a bit of a play, get a bit excited about it, to be honest. I mean, we obviously love what we do. All of our, there's so much time and effort goes into all of our ciders, but this just offers us that little bit of creative opportunity to just make a one-off that's interesting and hopefully draw people in a bit more to cider and get it into those avenues that we don't normally get to. We've got some great conversations going on with some sommeliers and stuff with this cider, so I'd love to see it served in a fine dining establishment.
It deserves to, and the layers of complexity that go there, I think, is just absolutely incredible. Someone has saying could do with a bit of foxwhelp. Kath.
Oh, I know who that is. Yeah, well, we don't have much foxwhelp in Devon, unfortunately, Kath. I'd love to use them, and hopefully I'll be able to, I'd love to do a collaboration with Cider Makers, so getting some foxwhelp would be marvellous.
And can you tell us what foxwhelp is for
Foxwhelp's, So it's a bitter sharp variety, but it's unbelievably sour. As a single variety, some people like it, but I think they're a bit strange. It's just absolutely brutal. But for blending purposes, absolutely fantastic apple to use. There's plenty of varieties that aren't really grown that much in certain areas.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's one of the opportunities that we could try a bit harder in this industry, is collaborating with each other, using varieties from different regions, using different techniques, blending together. I think there's some lovely things that we could be making.
Yeah. And other comments coming in, just seconding just the quality, enjoying the flavors. Other people again seconding that this should be on restaurant menus. So yeah, really, really wonderful.
One day, let's hope. Yeah, there's plenty of it, so I'd love to see it in a restaurant. But yeah, we'll get there one day. We just got to carry on with that. Getting people talking about cider, getting them interested in it. And, giving it another chance. I think there's a rethink cider is something that a lot of people talk about, because its name has been sort of dragged through the mud a bit, but we're definitely getting there. And with products like these, hopefully that will help to get there some way. I'm going to have a little bit more of this, I think.
Yeah, I think you deserve to. Absolutely incredible. I don't know if there's any more questions or comments coming in from anyone else. We've just got another one that's just flashed up on my screen. Really interesting. They're going to watch this again when they've bought some. There's been apparently a great piece on Radio Devon today as well on this. And just to feed into the other cider makers, the mic sound is much lower than the other presenters. I see, sorry. So they were saying that your mic is a little bit lower than the others, but I'm sure we can all hear you perfectly. So,
okay.
But someone was saying there was a piece on cider on Radio Devon today. So maybe one of your local purchasers has been listening to the radio today, listening to cider making on Radio Devon. So that was really useful.
That's amazing. Oh, the one thing I didn't say. So the apples for this cider came from Small Orchards, which is in Newtonstone, so it's 4 miles away, grown by Tom Brown. And then I think that's one of the things that's really crucial about our cider making is just it is very much there. Like, we're right in the middle of our cider land, effectively. So it's amazing that there's no food, 3-4 food miles for this cider. It's quite extraordinary, really.
Fantastic. Someone has just messaged, they've clearly got a very eagle eye or a long-term customer, and said, why have you rebranded? Not the branding affects the taste or a quality product, but they're interested in why you've rebranded.
We rebranded because we've done in Devon. We're doing a really great job. We've got a really strong fan base down here, and people love what we make. But the next kind of avenue is to get out of Devon. And I mean, I worked at a beer festival in Bristol a couple of years ago, and it's not as the crow flies, it's not very far away. Big cider city, they absolutely love it up there. And I must have served hundreds of people that weekend, and about 6 knew who we were. So part of that rebrand is to try and get more opportunities in different supermarkets. This branding is much more vibrant, hopefully a bit more eye-catching on the supermarket shelf. There's so much competition in our industry. There's so many new cider makers on the block. So just trying to get these listings is really important to us, and that's hopefully what this new branding will do. I think it looks really smart. Really love the new branding, actually. Yeah,
it looks great. Someone has messaged. They're in Manchester and said they want to see you on the shelves in Manchester. So there is.
Yeah, that'd be great.
As a vox pop of people watching this, there is nationwide demand.
Yeah. No. I mean, that'd be amazing. Yeah, I'd love to see our ciders all over the country. Hopefully, we'll get there. It's just, it's just trying to find those. It's the logistic issue, I suppose. Getting stuff out of the county can be a bit difficult, but we'll get there. I think we've recently had some stuff go up to Durham. Some friends of mine run a pub up there, so it's quite exciting that up in the north now that they can get cider.
Yes, another question coming in. It's probably the last question we've got as we come up towards the end of the hour. Some producers have said that whilst COVID has been a very tough year, it's been given them a bit of a space to try new things. Have you had that extra space to try and experiment?
No, not really. It's just been flat. When COVID happened, I got put on furlough for about 3 days, and then they rang me back and said, "Can you come do deliveries?" I've been doing for about a month and a half or so. I was doing deliveries to people's doors. To be honest, that was such a lovely opportunity to meet our customers. It's not something that we did before, and internet sales have stayed much stronger than they ever were pre-COVID. So it's quite exciting that we've got those different avenues. But in terms of experimenting, no, not really. But in terms of making cider this year, there will still be a few bits and bobs that I'll be playing with, and if they're good enough, then hopefully we'll turn them into exciting products.
Sure. And we've got one last question before we finish up, and that is, have you thought about making a Normandy-style fizzy cider? That they come in those champagne-style bottles, which could maybe work in restaurants. That was from Joe.
I mean, I'm always up for doing stuff like that. I mean, yeah, she's talking about Y.D.B cider, so naturally sweet ciders, quite often quite lower in alcohol as well, and they can be absolutely delicious. But again, hopefully that's something that we will play around with when we're establishing a new cidery at Darts Farm in Topsham, and that's really going to be where me, Barney, and Dave get to have a play. So stuff like that will definitely be on the cards when we're all set up over there. Yeah, no, we're really excited about that. Actually, it's a really important project, and it's really great to be working with Darts Farm. They do so much for local food around here anyway. So to have that opportunity there will be fantastic. But yeah, definitely I'd love to do ciders like that. So just watch this space, I suppose.
Well, we're delighted to work with Sandford's. The back of every bottle of Sandford's displays the Slow Food logo, and we're very proud that you do that.